So here we are, celebrating 20 years of Zinzino and really 2 decades of shaping the way that health is done on a global scale. And we couldn't let this landmark moment pass without stopping and having a look at the science that drives exactly what it is that we do in the 21st century. And so there is no better person to speak with, there's no better place to be at. Let me inform you first of all, here we are in the bowels of the Vitas laboratories, and I'm here with Thomas Gunderson from Vitas in order for us to really talk it through, Thomas. And that's, there's no better person because you've been here from the start of the test-based nutrition journey. And in fact, from my understanding, that journey goes back even further for you personally and professionally. So let's commence by looking backwards. Today, I really want to look back. Then I want to take stock of where we're at, and then I think it'd be wise for us to start to consider how the future might look. But let's go back first. Thomas, talk us through, you've been here from the start. Tell us a little bit about the history of what's brought us here today.
Yeah. So Vitas is 30 years this year. So it was established in 1994. And we started by doing fatty lipid soluble vitamins for the primary health care in Norway.
Oh, right, yeah.
Then we moved on to market for vitamin B deficiency. And in 2005, we started a company called Bioindex. Actually, it was the first personal nutrition company in the world.
Really?
Yeah, and we did like 5-6 different biomarkers from dry blood spots. And in addition, we asked some questions and we calculated the risk of different diseases and also the biological age.
So that was very much focused on like the kind of disease aspect of it when you're starting to look at health.
Yeah, it was disease focused.
I see.
And one of these analysis that we did was fatty acids in dry blood spots.
Right, okay.
So that was in 2005. And I think maybe that there was a company called Bioactive Foods. And I think Zinzino bought this in about 2012.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And at that time they did the balance test. It was performed at the St. Olav's Hospital in Trondheim. And after a few years or a year, I think Zinzino thought that it might not be smart to continue to do this, to grow this company inside a governmentally owned hospital.
Mm.
So I think Ørjan looked, and he saw that there was a company called Bioindex, and they did fatty acid analysis. So he called me. I think it was 2012, 2013. And we gave it some thought, and we decided to go to provide services for Zinzino. Mm. And I think it was a good choice.
Yeah, I think for everybody.
Yeah.
But it's interesting you mentioned that because when I was first made aware of Zinzino and the test, which is only 4.5 years ago, when I saw it, I went, oh yeah, it's the Trondheim test.
Yeah.
So I kind of knew it based on that.
Yeah.
And then obviously I'm aware now that it was adapted a little bit along with Professor Angela Rizzo. But so really that's where this comes into, is that notion of taking it from Trondheim, taking it to yourselves, which was obviously a wise decision, and then turning it into what it's become. So tell us more from that point forward then.
Yeah, so I think we kind of split the analysis floor in 2. So St. Olav did half, and then we did the other half in kind of testing Vitas as a laboratory, as a service provider. And then I think they were happy with the services, the quality, the speed, and the prices. And so there was a decision to switch all the samples to Vitas in Oslo.
So you've hit on something there, which I would imagine is going to become a bit of a recurring theme for this conversation, which is quality. Without getting into specifics, this is probably the number one thing that we get asked about, even challenged about, which is the quality. How can people rely on the test? Maybe we could open up that part of the conversation now. What was it then that determined that quality aspect of it? What was it that you were able to evidence, moving those services to yourself? What was it about the quality aspect that you could evidence and prove?
Yeah, we kind of received the methods from St. Olav's, because, the data need to be comparable over time, So the analysis we performed today will produce the same result as the ones we did in 2013, right?
Yeah.
Of course, you know, they need to be comparable. And so what we have added is like security measures, like quality measures, you know, to benchmark the data, you know, the quality, and also to secure that they reproduce well over time.
So essentially you turned up the dial on quality.
Yeah.
I mean, essentially, for anyone who's not aware, the art of science is all about how accurate you can make an observation and how reproducible that observation is. You know, can you consistently measure something against the exact same standard in order for you to identify any changes that have taken place? And in the context of health and then test-based nutrition, that is the crux, that's the very essence of it, isn't it?
Absolutely. Accuracy is the most important thing. And then that you have continuous accuracy over time, you know? So, when we do like a measure, any type of measure, like time, you know, or the scale you use at your bathroom, you know, we need to have like some standard, some reference, you know? For the time, it's the Greenwich Middle Time in the UK, you know? This is the kind of the gold standard, you know? And when you do like measurements on a scale, like when you bake a cake or you measure your body weight, you need to have a standard, you know, so you can buy a standard in the shop, right? So also for the blood analysis, we buy a certified reference material. For instance, from the Institute of Standards and Technology in the US. So this is a blood samples, it's freeze-dried, and we add some water and we apply it to the methods. We use our method to measure this standard. And this is how we can kind of benchmark the accuracy at the start, you know. And then we have these quality control samples. These are dry blood spots that we make from a huge amount of blood, the same type of blood. We make tens of thousands, and from the accuracy we have in the bottom, you know, the standard material, then we have repeated measurements of this standard over time. So what we are looking for is a straight line going up and down with small deviation. What we don't want to see is a measurement, a result going up, or going down, right? We want it to be a straight line. And then we look for extremes, like odd results, you know, not likely to happen. And then we need to go through the calculations. And if we find an error, we can correct this and report the right result. If you don't find it, we need to do a reanalysis. And this is why we need a second sample.
I see, So in itself, the test as is today, and I don't know if we've got enough time to really delve into the full test kind of procedure, but the test itself is its own quality check by that process, isn't it? Yeah. So if we look just a little bit more then, you know, because the whole purpose of this is to capture 20 years worth of Zinzino and looking at this test-based nutrition, but obviously you pioneered in this space even before that, which is arguably fair to say was way before its time. Because I'd say that even now the world is waking up to this notion of test-based, individualized health, nutrition. How did you perceive that? You know, let's go back to 2012, 2013, and you take this phone call from Orion, which is about moving this test to you. What was your expectation and what was your vision at that point? Did you have any idea it would grow to the extent that it is now?
No, I couldn't imagine, no. I mean, I think we did like at max 2,000 tests per month.
Right.
You know, at that time.
Yeah.
Now we are approaching 25,000.
Yeah, a little bit different.
Yeah. We have like 1 or 2 machines now. We have 17, you know. So it's growing by about 20% per year now. So as you know, we reached 1 million not long ago, and we are fast approaching another 1 million.
That's right.
So I think it's looking exponential. So in a few years, it's going to be millions of samples, I think.
And so does that meet with the expectations you had, you know, a long time, even before you'd heard of Zinzino? Does that meet with those expectations now? Or I guess more importantly, the time between those two, what do you think now as you look forward? How is this whole field going to open up? What do you imagine is going to be the next kind of leap and step in this notion of test-based nutrition and health?
I think we're going to, one important thing is that Zinzino is a global company, you know, expanding all over the world. I think in the start it was more like a Nordic type of company. Now it's expanding into more and more countries. I think this is a major important thing. And of course we are adding more tests. In addition to the balance test, we now have the vitamin D test and the diabetes test.
Yeah.
And as you know, I think the diabetes test is really important. I know you do as well. And I think I would really like Zinzino to focus a lot on this diabetes test in the future. And of course, we are getting a lot of data. And this is also has a lot of high value, I would say. So we need to work with the data and publish scientific papers from the data and learn from the data to help the people that donate these samples.
Well, I mean, there's so many things there, Thomas. Where should we delve into next? I'm inclined to delve into capacity, but I'm going to come back to that because I know that's something else that people, they say, great, so there's all this growth, there's millions of samples, but, can we sustain that and can we maintain that? But I'll come back to that because I think it's a bit more interesting if we look at the present. And this is something that you and I deal with on certainly a monthly basis, if not a weekly basis. That analysis of the database and the types of information, the types of what we can draw from that from a meaningful point of view. So let's first start off with, we're on the threshold of publishing those initial papers of the balance test data, of that fatty acid profile. That's going to have a huge impact on how the world thinks of omega-3 and the status of omega-3 from a global point of view. But let's delve into that vitamin D and HbA1c, or the type 2, the blood sugar test. What kind of data can we really elicit from that? And what do you think how do you think that's going to help us to shape health as we move forward?
I think for the vitamin D test, it's obviously do you have sufficient supplies of vitamin D in your body, in the blood, feeding your organs, your different cells. And I think there is a misunderstanding on the vitamin D status in the world, because people think that the closer you are to equator, the higher better your vitamin D status is. Actually, it's opposite, So the status is best in the Nordic countries. And it's worse in Africa and in Spain and in countries with a lot of sun. So I think that this will be an important tool to actually show people who has sufficient supplies of vitamin D, and who has not.
Yeah.
No,
I was going to say, 20 years ago, I was taken to stages and conferences trying to encourage everybody to consider how they would supplement with vitamin D because of these kind of factors. And I feel now that we've had huge echoes around the world as to why that's important, but still it's the same challenge of getting people to wake up on that notion. Is data the way to prove that, or is it through communication? I think luckily at Zinzino we have both. Which do you think? Both. Yeah.
So you need to measure first, and then you can communicate, and then you can correct, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And obtain better health.
Without going into there's certain things we can't discuss today because it's data we're working on. But if we look at what we very proudly call crowd science, and that's where we look at the opportunity we have to analyze and interpret these databases, and we've discussed recently there are certain insights coming forward with regards to certain types of Zinzino products and its impact on cholesterol, and when we start to look at triglycerides, what do you see as the kind of future for that and how we go about managing that message?
I think this is a very exciting field, and I think the important key is that the numbers are getting high. We have a lot of power. We do like 20,000 people every month. In a year, it's like 300,000 people. And after 3 years, it's like 3 million people. We have a lot of data, And we can, in 1 month, we can easily look into the diabetes issue. And we can see what kind of product will lower your blood sugar and help people to reverse type 2 diabetes. In another month, we can look at sleep deprivation, for instance, because a lot of people have issues with sleep, right? And we know that sleep is really, really important for health. So people could sign up in a crowd science fashion to help investigate sleep issues, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
In a similar way, we can do all sorts of different things over the years, you know. So I think this is a kind of a responsibility that Zinzino actually has, you know, to use the power they have in this system, this platform, to do science.
I mean, I've written about this, which is this notion that traditional scientific methods has always been to collect the population size, which has a statistical relevance, make observations, and then draw that out against the population. And I was taught that, as I'm sure you were, whilst at university and learning about research. And I always remember one of our professors saying, the reason we do this is because we can't just go out and measure the whole world. And then you've got an organization like Zinzino.
Yeah, you can.
With Vitas, who's literally just going out and measuring the world. And so there's a huge value in the insights that give that's decidedly different to traditional research, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I really think that together, Zinzino and Vitas and the crowd out there, you know, the Zinzino crowd, can really make a difference into science, you know. And if we carefully shape this platform, the crowd science platform, making sure it has sufficient quality, you know, as it grows, you know, and maybe team up with top-notch researchers at Ivy League universities like Cambridge or Harvard, you know, I think this could be really, really, really valuable for the humankind, actually.
Well, I mean, that's certainly the direction that we are rapidly heading in. We've touched a little bit on quality, which is really important when it comes to test-based health, nutrition. Of course it is. But let's talk a little bit about capacity, because throughout this conversation, we've talked about those increasing numbers.
Yeah.
And I guess there's also an art to marrying that notion of maintaining quality as you increase capacity.
Yeah.
So talk us through the processes from Vitas's point of view. How are we future-proof? How do we look down the lens of the next 20 years and make sure that we're ever increasing numbers, maintaining that quality, and that we can serve that amount of people?
I think what is really, really good is that we are not beginners at this, you know. We've been doing this for 30 years, you know, shaping the methods. Now it's very robust, you know. So when I have visitors in the lab, I use the term copy, paste, you know.
Yeah.
Because we don't develop new things, you know. We change tiny things, you know, but mainly we copy, paste, you know. So when we have another 4,000 samples, we just copy, paste one instrument, one method, you know, the people, the knowledge, the IP, you know. And I think this is quite important to not be tempted to go for new technologies, but stay with the ones that really work, you know, because when you have this growth, you know, you need to be really careful what you change. Because changes are dangerous, you know. So you need to be careful what you change, just small things, and evaluate it really carefully before you do it. So I think this kind of thinking is really important to maintain the robustness as we grow this into enormous numbers in the future.
And that actually brings me back to another point that I want us to touch upon before we finish here, really, is that we're looking forward to the future. To, you know, hopefully we'll be having a conversation when we reach the 30-year milestone.
Yeah.
So you and I both know there are tests that we're working on right now, and that have taken a lot of time and perseverance and intellect and emotion. And maybe people are wondering, well, why is this taking so long? So give us your take on why these newer tests that we're about to bring forward have taken the time they've taken to develop.
You know, science is difficult, you know. To make new innovations are difficult, you know. And it need to have quality and need to be meaningful for the user, right? So, I mean, it takes time. And actually to merge like commercial interest and science is maybe one of the more difficult things you can do. Because the commercial forces, they need speed and make money and so on. But science, you know, as scientists, we need to make sure that it's not launched before it has the sufficient quality, right? So we will never launch anything before it has meaning for the consumer and has sufficient quality. And this is difficult and it takes time, you know. But in the end, we will have a new product and it will have top-notch quality and it will be meaningful for the consumer. and it will add to also the income of Zinzino and Vitas.
Mm-hmm. Let's really start to wrap this up by, let's take a moment to predict. Let's have a look at you and I sat in a similar place like this, 10 years time, looking just as young and handsome. What do you think we will be reflecting on then? So imagine now, 10 years forward, what will we be reflecting on? And what do you think we'll be kind of planning in our minds for the next 10 years of Zinzino at that point?
I think we will agree that it was good that we didn't give up, you know. I think we will say good work. We managed in the end, and it was a success, you know. And we probably have learned even more, and we will have the knowledge to develop even more complicated and more powerful tests for the future.
Do you whole stock agree that whilst we're still in the early days of test-based nutrition and health for a lot of people, that when we get to that 10-year mark, the things that we're discussing will be far more of a common conversation, that far more people will be aware and have woken up to this notion of how they manage their health, and that the focus for us all will be on refinement and how to do things better rather than so much pioneering?
I think people will take more and more kind of responsibility for their own health, you know. They will demand services that give them insight into the numbers and the blood markers, not kind of relying on the doctor and the health system, the traditional systems. I think there will be more and more services that uses dry blood spot for testing, and I think Zinzino will be one of the major players in this field. For sure. And I also think that the database that we will have at that time is so huge and so high quality, and we will have kind of figured out how to use this in a way that really impacts health on a global level.
I don't think there's any stronger words that I can use to conclude this conversation than those, Thomas. So thank you very much for sharing those insights. And here we are. We've reflected on the past, we've taken stock of where we're at, and we've considered the future, and we look forward to speaking to you all again. Maybe 5 years down the line, maybe 10 years down the line, but here we are at the 20-year mark, having covered so much, but with still so much more left to do.